August 19th, 1944, near Chambois, France. The air hangs thick with the smell of diesel and dust, a haze rising from the churned earth as Allied tanks crawl across the ridges. To the west, smoke columns mark burning German convoys, their black trails smudging the late summer sky. The thunder of artillery never stops. It rolls like distant storms through the hills of Normandy. On a shallow slope outside the small French village of Chambois, a Canadian officer named Major David Curry peers through his binoculars, sweat beads beneath his helmet, streaking the grime on his face. Around him, the men of the South Alberta Regiment wait tensely behind their Shermans and Cromwells, engines idling low. The radio crackles. Reports from Polish armored units to the east, American infantry to the south. The noose is tightening. Curry lowers the glasses and mutters, "They're boxed in." He's right. What he is looking at is the dying gasp of the German 7th Army and 5th Panzer Army, trapped in what history will call the Falaise Pocket, one of the most decisive encirclements of World War II. Nearly 100,000 German soldiers, along with tanks, trucks, and artillery, are jammed into a shrinking corridor of farmland less than 6 miles wide. For days, they've been clawing for an escape route eastward toward the Seine. But the Allies, Canadians from the north, Americans from the south, and the Poles from the east, are converging fast. And in the middle of that killing ground, Hitler's once feared panzer divisions are running out of everything: fuel, ammunition, morale. Curry's men, exhausted after weeks of continuous combat since D-Day, are now part of the Trap-S final hinge, the last piece needed to close the German escape route. His orders are simple but brutal. Hold the line at all costs. If they can seal this pocket, it could end the war in France. As the sun dips behind the hedgerows, Curry moves among his men. He checks the gunners' positions, pats shoulders, gives nods of reassurance. "They're desperate," he says quietly, "and desperate men fight hard." Just over the hill, a line of panzers begins to stir. German commanders know this is their last chance. Hundreds of vehicles form up under the cover of smoke. The whine of engines, the metallic clank of treads, the ominous sound of an armored counterattack preparing to break through. Curry signals his artillery forward observers. "When they crest that ridge," he orders, "light them up." Minutes later, the first WWII tank appears, its massive turret scanning the fields. Behind it, a wave of armored vehicles, Panzer IVs, half-tracks, motorcycles, and Kubelwagens surges toward the Canadians. The air erupts with the shriek of 88mm shells. The ground trembles. Curry ducks behind a Sherman as dirt sprays over him. He yells into his radio, "Fire! Fire everything you've got!" The hillside flashes alive. Allied Sherman Fireflies return fire, their 17-pounder guns cracking through the thunder. One shell pierces a panzer's side, setting it ablaze. Another finds the Tiger's rear armor, bursting it open like a furnace. But for every German tank that burns, another pushes forward through the smoke, tracks grinding over the wrecks of the fallen. Within minutes, the entire valley becomes a cauldron. Machine guns rattle from barn windows. Mortar rounds arc overhead. The air smells of cordite and burning oil. Amid the chaos, German infantry begin to break through in small groups. Desperate, ragged, but relentless. Curry sees them running. He lifts his sidearm and shouts, "Hold your fire till you can see the whites of their eyes." When the enemy reaches 50 yards, the Canadians unleash everything. The fields vanish in fire and lead. German soldiers drop where they stand, mowed down by the concentrated fury of a force that refuses to be overrun. Hours pass, night falls. Still, the attacks continue. By dawn, hundreds of German vehicles lie shattered across the valley, burning wreckage marking the futility of their breakout attempt. Curry's men, though battered and bloodied, still hold the line. They have done what many thought impossible: let themselves be surrounded, and then destroyed everything that came for them. As the smoke clears, Curry looks over the ruined fields of Normandy. His radio buzzes with distant reports: Polish forces holding Mont-Ormel Ridge, American artillery raining fire from the south. The pocket is closing fast. The trap has worked. But the worst is not over yet, because inside that shrinking circle of chaos, tens of thousands of Germans are still fighting like cornered beasts. And the Canadians, Poles and Americans will soon find themselves in the middle of a massacre unlike anything they've ever seen. August 20th, 1944. Dawn breaks over the hills east of Chambois. The fog is thick, so thick you can barely see 10 meters ahead. It clings to the hedgerows, muffles the sound of engines, and hides the horror beneath. As the morning light creeps in, the fog begins to lift, revealing a landscape straight out of a nightmare. The valley below Mont-Ormel Ridge, now known to the men as the Mace, is littered with destruction. Burnt-out panzers line the ditches. Abandoned trucks sit with doors flung open, supplies scattered. Horses lie dead in their harnesses. The air is heavy with the stench of fuel, blood, and decay. Up on the ridge, the men of the 1st Polish Armored Division, led by General Stanisław Maciek, are bracing themselves for what they know is coming. They had been ordered to move in and seal the last escape corridor east of Falaise, to close the pocket completely. And in doing so, they've trapped themselves too. Captain Władysław Zgorzelski, commanding a Sherman Firefly, scans the horizon with his binoculars. Below him, German troops are flooding into the valley in a chaotic retreat. Thousands of them, jammed together in convoys that stretch for miles. "Sir," his gunner says, voice tight, "there's no end to them." Zgorzelski lowers his glasses. "Then we hold until there is." The Poles dig in. They position their tanks hull down on the slopes, conceal their machine guns in the tree lines, and prepare to unleash hell. The Germans below, remnants of the 2nd SS Panzer Division, 12th SS Hitlerjugend, and Panzer Lehr, are desperate to escape east. But to do that, they'll have to break through the Poles. At 0700 hours, it begins. From the south and east, the sound of engines swells, a low, rolling growl that grows into a roar. Columns of panzers and half-tracks surge forward, weapons firing blindly through the smoke. The Poles open up with everything they have. "Fire!" Zgorzelski shouts. A Firefly's cannon recoils violently, the shell streaking down into the valley. A Panzer IV explodes, its turret spinning into the air like a toy. Another tank brews up in flames, its crew scrambling out only to be cut down by machine gun fire. The ridge shakes as mortars and artillery rain down. The Germans retaliate, their 88mm guns hammering the Polish lines. Shrapnel whips through the air, tearing through branches and flesh alike. One Firefly takes a direct hit, its ammunition cooking off in a thunderous chain reaction. Still, the Poles hold. For every position lost, another crewman climbs into a burning vehicle to fire one last round. The men fight not for glory, but survival. They know retreat is impossible. Behind them lies open countryside with no support, only the enemy. A Polish infantry sergeant, crouched behind a wrecked half-track, wipes soot from his eyes and mutters to his comrade, "They were not trying to fight us, they were trying to run through us." And he's right. The Germans aren't launching an organized attack, they're fleeing. Entire divisions crushed together in panic. Officers scream for order, waving pistols. Trucks crash into tanks, horses bolt, men stumble over the dead. It's chaos, and the Poles are in the middle of it. By mid-afternoon, the scene becomes apocalyptic. The valley below Mont-Ormel is now a continuous blaze. Explosions ripple from one wreck to another, black smoke towering high into the summer sky. The ground is slick with oil and blood. The smell is suffocating. German soldiers begin surrendering in groups, hands raised, eyes hollow. Others keep fighting, firing their last rounds at an enemy they can barely see through the smoke. A few, maddened by desperation, charge uphill with bayonets. They never make it far. On the radio, Zgorzelski hears the voice of his commander, "Hold your positions. The Canadians are coming to relieve you." But no one knows when. The Canadians are still fighting their way through pockets of resistance around Chambois. The Poles are on their own, running low on ammunition and fuel. As night falls, the battlefield glows with hundreds of fires. The crackle of burning fuel mixes with the distant screams of the wounded. The Poles hold the ridge, but they're surrounded on three sides. In the darkness, Zgorzelski leans against the hull of his tank, exhaustion etched deep in his face. Around him, his men reload their last shells. Somewhere down the slope, a German engine sputters to life. Another attempt to break through. He sighs, then mutters in Polish, "Let them come." Because he knows, the trap they've built isn't just holding, it's devouring the German army alive. August 21st, 1944, the second day of hell. The dawn mist clings to the fields around Mont Ormel Ridge, turning the battlefield into a ghostly wasteland. The Poles have barely slept. Their ammunition is nearly gone, their radios flicker with static, and many of their wounded lie in the open, wrapped in blood-stained blankets. Yet still, they hold. At first light they hear it, the low, distant rumble of engines from the valley below. Another German breakout attempt. Captain Zgorzelski lifts his binoculars once more, eyes red from exhaustion. Below, the valley seems to come alive again. Hundreds of vehicles crawling forward, men running beside them, dragging the wounded, shouting orders no one obeys. He sees the distinctive crosses painted on their hulls, and the unmistakable shapes of Tiger tanks pushing to the front. "Here they come again," he mutters grimly. But this time, the Germans aren't alone. Luftwaffe planes, a rare sight in 1944, dive out of the clouds. The howl of Ju-87 Stukas sends chills through the Polish ranks. The first bombs explode just short of the ridge, sending plumes of dirt skyward. The second wave finds its mark. A Sherman Firefly erupts in flames. Men scatter as machine gun rounds rake their trenches. The German counterattack is coordinated this time. Tanks from the 2nd SS Panzer Division hammering the ridge, while infantry swarm the slopes. "Hold your fire until they're in range," Zgorzelski shouts. When they crest the rise, the Poles open up with everything left. Armor-piercing shells, captured Panzerfausts, even rifles firing tracer rounds into the dust. The ridge becomes a wall of flame. One Tiger tank takes a direct hit from a Firefly S-17-pounder and bursts apart in a blinding flash. Another rumbles forward, its tracks torn, turret still firing until a shell from a hidden anti-tank gun punches through its side, blowing the crew out. The Polish line wavers but doesn't break. Even as ammunition runs dry, they fight on with grenades and bayonets. German infantry pour up the slopes, hurling grenades and shouting, "Für das Vaterland." The Poles meet them at point-blank range, in brutal hand-to-hand combat among the burning wrecks. By midday, the battlefield looks like something out of the apocalypse. The smoke is so thick, it blots out the sun. Flames consume the valley floor, and the sound, the endless hammer of artillery, the scream of shells, the cries of the dying, never stops. Then, faintly at first, the Poles hear something new. Over the chaos, the distant thump of tank guns, not German this time, but Allied. To the west, Canadian armor is finally breaking through toward Chambois. To the south, American artillery begins pounding German positions still trapped in the pocket. The encirclement is closing like an iron fist. German officers realize the truth. It's over. Their escape route has been sealed. Desperation turns to madness. Thousands of German soldiers abandon their vehicles, fleeing on foot through the forests and ditches. Some try to swim the Dives River under machine gun fire. Others surrender in groups, throwing down weapons and collapsing in exhaustion. Zgorzelski's gunner looks at him and whispers, "Sir, they're breaking." He nods. "And we're breaking them." Down in the valley, the last organized German resistance begins to crumble. The Falaise Pocket, once a proud assembly of Hitler's best panzer divisions, is now a graveyard of steel and smoke. By late afternoon, the Poles finally receive word over the radio. The Canadians have reached them. Relief forces are on the way. The survivors on Mont Ormel Ridge cheer weakly, some too exhausted to stand. When Canadian Shermans crest the ridge, the sight stops them cold. All around are burnt-out tanks, twisted trucks, and the bodies of men and horses scattered across the fields. The Poles, blackened by soot and blood, lean against their vehicles, eyes hollow but unbroken. They've held the line, and with it, they've sealed the fate of the German army in France. As the sun sets over the valley, General Mazek surveys the scene. Smoke still rises from the wreckage, drifting toward the horizon. He removes his helmet, wipes the grime from his face, and mutters softly, This is victory. But it's a victory bought at a terrible price. The Falaise pocket will go down as one of the most decisive and bloodiest encirclements of the war. Over 10,000 Germans dead, 50,000 captured, and tens of thousands more wounded or scattered in retreat. The Allied losses are heavy too, but they've done the impossible. Let the enemy come to them, fall into the trap, and destroy themselves inside it. When the Poles march off the ridge days later, they do so in silence. There's no celebration, only the knowledge that they stood their ground against overwhelming odds and changed the course of the war in Western Europe. As one war correspondent wrote afterward, they held the gate of the pocket, and at that gate, the German army died.